Hey, how about you, everybody? Welcome into the Wednesday edition of Inside the 20 with myself and Keith Niebuhr. We will do our absolute best to get you as much recruiting intel with inside the 20-minute mark. I am joined, as I always am, by Mr. Keith Niebuhr. Keith, how you doing this morning?
I'm good, man. What's up, brother?
A little foggy.
Yeah, a little foggy. Let's see if we can get this cleaned up.
Hey, we both work for Auburn Live on 3, and if you're not a member of that site, man, my goodness, the amount of content you are missing this week, blowing it out in every angle, from every angle, football recruiting, basketball recruiting, football visitors coming in this weekend, something that Keith and I are going to get to in a moment. But before I do, got to say, remind everybody, Caleb Schofield, man, it's got a huge promotion going this week. Want everybody to get there and take advantage of it. Going to run a special on all his Ford and Lincoln vehicles. It's going to sell them an invoice. F-150s, Explorers, Expeditions, Navigators, all of them. All going for invoice. No hidden fees or catches. Hands down, the biggest deal of the year. Get up with Caleb Schofield, Mike Patton Auto in LaGrange, Georgia, 334-531-0996. You still get the free lifetime warranty on the powertrain with this deal. Ford and Lincoln have special financing rates on these vehicles as well, so you won't have to pay high interest rates. It is the deal, especially this week. Only this week, man. Ford, Lincoln's invoice only. 334-531-0996. Caleb Schofield there at Mike Patton Auto in LaGrange. Keith, we're going to try to do this all in 20 minutes, but there's a lot to talk about. Auburn is at home Saturday night against Texas A&M. It's going to be a raucous environment, I would expect. Cadillac Williams leading the Tigers, and actually a point favorite, I think, Zach. Still, Auburn's still favored to win, if I'm not mistaken. And I expect all the Auburn family. Keith, Brian Harsin gone. This is what you wanted. Time to recover. Let's start the healing, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because all along this was going to be a big
Auburn -2.
Yeah, this was going to be a big recruiting weekend, whether both teams were 7-2 or Harsin was still the coach. I mean, it was always setting up to be a big recruiting weekend. And now you've got two teams with losing records, and it's still going to be a big recruiting weekend because so many of these kids had these visits planned before Brian Harsin was even fired. I mean, you have to fit visits into your schedule too. So especially if you're from a long way. We're dealing with a lot of kids, Jeffrey, that are coming from Montgomery, Birmingham, Atlanta.
Sure.
They can change these things on a whim. But a kid coming from Miami, Fort Lauderdale, he's sort of got to plan it out well in advance. And Rock Bell and Tony and, Steven Ruzick, but also Darren Usher, who's no longer with the program, and even Brian Harsin to a lesser degree. I don't think he was too involved with too many of these guys. I mean, maybe Ruben Bain, the four-star edge. Credit those guys too. But all in all, this is going to be a big weekend. A lot of official visitors, a lot of unofficial visitors. We've got two 5 stars that we know of coming from South Florida. We've got multiple 4 stars. So again, you even though you don't have a permanent head coach, you've got an environment, an atmosphere. You're selling the vision of Auburn as a whole. You've got the new facility you're going to be able to show off before the game. I mean, it's all done, Jeff. The facility. They're just putting the finishing touches on it. So any kid that goes through there is going to see it almost as a finished product. And then also, you're just trying to keep these kids interested until and they know who your permanent head coach is. If they like what they see, they'll give that new guy a shot. And if they're younger and they like what they see, they may come back for a junior day in March, and then again in June. So May or June. So it's still a big weekend. You can't just say, well, lost the head coach, season sucks, let's just worry about next year. It doesn't work that way. Too many spots to fill. We both heard they could sign between high school, junior college portal, like 40 guys.
That's half the roster.
There's a ton of work to be done.
Half the roster.
And it started last week, and it's continuing this week, and really big this weekend.
Hey, you had the news this morning. Tony Mitchell, is he a 5-star?
Tony Mitchell's the DB that's committed to Alabama from Thompson High School, I should point out, in Alabaster, Alabama. He was a 5-star. He slipped to a 4-star. You don't see – I'm sure we'll have people point out, you don't see many Bama commits drop to 4 stars, but he's like 35th in the country. I mean, he's barely not a 5-star. I'm sure it's an ego thing for a young guy, though. You're called a 5-star for a long time, and now you're not. But good player. Could play corner. Could play safety. I think Auburn's recruiting him at corner. Zach has been big in that recruitment. Now, look, Jeffrey, Tony Mitchell, the Bama commit, he's already visited Auburn twice this fall, once for an unofficial, once for an official, and now expected back this week. And now we don't have confirmation from him, but we've got sources that have told us he's coming. Sometimes he says he doesn't know, and then he ends up being there. I mean, you just don't know. But our sources say he's going to be there. Third visit, something to keep an eye on. I mean, they got to be looking at Auburn's roster, these young guys right now, and saying, man, if they get the right coach and I can get in there and play early, I mean, I got to give them a look.
NIL? Yeah,
NIL. I think we're going to see a lot of this. NIL people at Auburn are going to be swamped over the next few months. So Tony Mitchell, I mean, that's a significant visit. And look, anytime you're getting a guy from Bama to visit, that's significant. And also, we don't know unknown factor. What does Bama think about all this? Do they care? Do they?
You're right,
guys. I mean, we don't know. So, but it's a big development, obviously.
As of today, we know of 6 official visitors coming in. You got Clay Whedon and DeQuavius Story, both Auburn commitments, and then you talked about Lamar Seymour coming up from Central Miami, Stanquan Clark coming up from Central Miami, Edwin Joseph from Chaminade Madonna, and Brian Longwell, an interesting guy from Nashville, Tennessee, a linebacker that Auburn went to see. Christian Robinson went to see, I think, 2 weeks ago. Love this kid. He's really blowing up in this senior year. Auburn's going to bring him in this weekend for an official visit. And then, of course, we mentioned the Miami Central guys. Keith, I thought we had two really blockbuster stories this morning with Tony Mitchell, and then Joseph Hastings from On3 does a fantastic job for the network. Went down and got one-on-one with Reuben Bain yesterday. And I thought Reuben Bain had some really interesting things to say about Brian Harsin. Reuben Bain, like you said earlier, he was one of the recruits Brian Harsin was a factor for. He was actually heavily involved in his recruitment. But Reuben said, listen, I know the business side of things. If you're not winning, they're going to find somebody who will. So he's out. Rock Bellantoni is still in. Reuben Bain's personal preference for Coach Lane Kiffin. Coached his brother at FAU. So did Rock Bellantoni the year before Lane Kiffin got there. I noticed this morning Lane Kiffin got there at FAU and took over the Owls program and did not retain Bellantoni. So a little side note there for you Kiffin fans. What you got?
Well, I was just going to say, there's a lot going on with these Miami Central kids. First of all, let's just point out they've won back-to-back state titles at that program, going for a third. And you also have Keywan Jenkins, the quarterback at that program. He's visiting this weekend, Auburn as well, unofficial visit. Now, they've only offered him a preferred walk-on chance, a chance to be on the team and earn a scholarship. And he's cool with that. He's committed to FIU, Florida International University down there in Miami. But he says, hey, look, this may be my one chance to play in the SEC. I'm going to listen to Auburn. I'm going to take this seriously and strongly consider this because he thinks he's an SEC player. Now, he's not very tall. He says he's 6 foot. Some of his people around him say maybe 5'11". Lefty, doesn't have a cannon, 40-13 as a high school starter with 2 state titles. He's been starting since he was the 8th grade at Mater Academy down there, which is now where 2024 Auburn quarterback commit
Adrian Posse
plays. Yeah. So, but here's the thing. So he's cousins with Reuben Bain, right? And so a package deal, whatever. I'm sure Auburn's hoping it's a package deal. But he says, hey, look, wherever he goes, I'm going to go. Wherever I go, he's going to go. And then I said, okay, let me nail you down here. What if you pick Auburn and we think we think Auburn may get this guy now as a walk-on. If you pick Auburn, what does that do for Reuben Bain? He says, he's probably going to come with me. And I said, what percentage? And he said 95%. Okay, now that's pretty freaking high, okay? Also, in that story with Joseph Hastings, or the interview with Joseph Hastings that you wrote up, Reuben Bain told him that he was certainly feeling Auburn after that big
LSU game.
Yeah, so he's feeling Auburn. So now all the intel is starting to line up, right? All the intel is starting to line up. Here's another thing. Lamar Seymour, 3-star Pitt receiver commit who's on their team. A lot of potential. His teammates tell me if he puts his mind to it, this guy's an SEC player. He's got to get there. They were honest about that. But he told me, he said a couple of people have told him about Auburn. One, Camden Brown, right? You love yourself some Camden Brown, freshman receiver from Fort Lauderdale, was once a Pitt commit, while Lamar Seymour is currently committed to Pitt. He said, hey, give Auburn a look. And who was the guy that convinced him to take the visit this weekend? Reuben Bain. Okay, so Reuben Bain, and I'm not saying Reuben Bain, the 4-star edge for Miami Central, is actively recruiting for Auburn, but he's actively telling his friends about Auburn. I mean, he
He actually said, "I want them to experience. I want them to see what I saw."
something is there. Okay, and again, you got NIL, you got relationship with Bellantoni, the peace and quiet of Auburn as opposed to the concrete jungle of living in the major metropolis.
Playing time.
Yes, and something's there, but I've never felt strongly enough to put in a pick, and I know you haven't either. You've probably been closer than I have.
After LSU, I was pretty close.
Yeah, and now they may just be waiting to see who the coach is.
Yeah.
I don't know. Stanquan Clark, the teammate that's committed to Louisville, 4-star linebacker. I asked somebody close to him, what are Auburn's chances? And they thought 50-50 going into this visit. Well, 50-50 going into a visit, if that's accurate, isn't bad. Because
pretty damn good.
Visit would give you a little bit of a bump, you would think, right?
Yep.
So let's see how it goes. I mean, again, there's so many unknown variables here, Jeffrey. We don't know who the new coach is going to be. And is the new coach going to want all these guys? The new coach may say, no. I'll take this guy and that guy, but I ain't taking that dude and his buddy.
It's true.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid when Emmett signed with UF. I think they signed like 12 of his teammates. I mean, hey, you do what you got to do, right?
Hey, it paid off, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I think they won 6 games a year while he was there.
Oh, for real?
Well, probation.
Oh.
They were on probation from earlier transgressions from a previous administration. But
what was that guy's name, the big guy?
Charlie Pell.
Charlie Pell, yes.
Yeah. Great coach. I mean, he really turned that program. Nobody wants to talk about them, though. But so you don't know. I mean, is it worth it? Is it worth bringing in a couple extra guys? Well, if you only have 25 spots, Jeffrey, maybe not. But if you got 40 spots, my voice just went up there like your puberty.
Puberty's hell, man.
If you got 40 spots, maybe you're taking an extra guy or two, and especially if one of them is a walk-on, you ain't even losing a spot. And not only that, the kid's a winner. All these kids are winners. I talked to all of them. Bain is the one guy I don't really know. You know him. And these Clark too. But these guys are winners, man. You want guys like that in your program. Now, Bain and Clark are legit 4-star type guys. The other 2 guys, I don't know. Kewan Jenkins, the quarterback's doing well, but he's a preferred walk-on type. But he's a winner. They need a culture infusion, not.
Oh yeah, I completely agree.
Talent infusion and a culture infusion, because for all the talk, all the bluster about the culture change that needed to be done after Gus left, a lot of us thought that was kind of phooey when we heard it. Those were good kids; they never got in trouble, whatever. But every coach wants his own culture. Well, now we know there's a losing mindset at Auburn because they didn't win last year and they ain't winning this year. And so they're not losers per se, but they're
right. The mindset.
I'm assuming that's probably sunk in. Hey, we ain't that good. Well, you got to turn that around. So they got some real juice with these Miami kids right now.
What about Edwin Joseph? Is there a relationship there with him, or is this just familiarity with?
I don't know as much about that one. I do know that FSU's heavily involved, and I think Louisville is heavily involved. They got cred down in South Florida, and one of the reasons, Jeffrey, our old buddy Wesley McGriff,
there you go.
He's a coach there on the defense, and he is locked in with Stanquan Clark. Stanquan Clark, the linebacker we just mentioned, that's going to be at Auburn this weekend. He's committed to Louisville. Edwin Joseph strongly considering Louisville. Auburn does not think Miami is as big a factor for Joseph and Stanquan Clark as other people do. So we'll see. But Edwin Joseph, so we think Auburn, FSU, Louisville there, with Auburn probably running third going into this visit, we think. But he's been to Auburn before, and he's coming back. And this is an official visit. I mean, we'll see.
I feel like with Bain, you talked about waiting to see who the next head coach is going to be, who's going to be retained. It's almost, and this is just my personal opinion from I've loved following his recruitment. I really have. Since I interviewed him in person when he left in June after an official visit, and I saw then that this dude legitimately loved Auburn. And everything that I've seen and heard behind the scenes, most of this behind the scenes, I've seen him back that up when there's not a microphone in his face. I've seen what he says and how he says it, and it's like I said, after that LSU game, I think I had him at 75% on the hot board. That's how good I was feeling, how optimistic of Auburn's chances I was feeling. I dropped it down to 65 after Harsin was fired. I knew there was a good relationship there with him, and it, he even said it in the story. He said it was a negative. It was a negative when Harsin was fired, but not that big of a negative. Rock Bellantoni's still there. He loves Auburn. I think for me, it's a case of Ruben Bain going, "Hey man, I'm going to wait and see who Auburn hires, and unless it's just a crap hire, a guy that is just a no-go for me, I'm in." I really feel like unless Auburn hires a guy that Ruben Bain just doesn't click with, he'll sign with Auburn. I really feel that way. I feel like there's a reason he is bringing these kids to all his teammates to Auburn. He wants them to see it for themselves. So I feel optimistic depending on the coaching hire, and I could probably say that for several guys.
Well, what's funny is if he ends up picking Auburn, Ruben Bain. Boy, my hair is messed up. I'm looking at myself in the camera. If Ruben Bain ends up picking Auburn, you're probably going to kill me because I was one of the people telling you don't be patient on the pick while others were putting in picks. But here's why. We knew that he was visiting other schools, Miami, FSU, Alabama, and they were getting all getting positive vibes too. But now you have this kind of an unknown component. Unknown in the sense we don't know how much money a kid could make from NIL. But so we don't know what an Auburn NIL deal could be relative to a Miami one or an FSU one or an Alabama one. But what we knew was those schools all felt like this kid really likes us too. So we didn't know, is this just a kid that likes everybody, right? But now he keeps saying it over and over. He keeps visiting, and now all his friends are visiting Auburn too. Well, these same guys ain't visiting FSU together, okay?
Right.
They haven't visited Alabama together. Now, Miami probably because they're all right down there. I mean, if you're Auburn, you can't probably hope they were at the Miami game last week, as bad as they were, and the crowd indifference. And Miami's going to get it right. They're never down completely for very long because there's so much talent down there. But, also we still don't know whether these guys can go to
Miami
because their former head coach at Miami Central is now on the staff of Miami in an off-field role, and technically you're not supposed to be able to do that.
Black and white.
But are they going to change the rule? I mean, there's so many unknowns. It just blows you away. But what we know, what are the notes? He keeps going to Auburn, Ruben Bain. And Stanquan Clark's coming back for a second trip, the 4-star linebacker committed to Louisville. Edwin Joseph, the 4-star cornerback, he's coming back for a second trip. Now, Kewan Jenkins, the quarterback, this is going to be his first trip for a game, but he was at Auburn last summer. There's people down. Listen, let me tell you something. They got a 7-on-7 coach down in South Florida that's high on Auburn. There are other things at play here that people give Auburn a chance is getting pumped into a lot of kids' ears. You want to play in the SEC? Well,
you want to do it quickly?
This could be your opportunity.
2-minute warning, Keith, but I do want to say that not only these guys, but let's don't forget about Quay Russaw, James Smith up the road in Montgomery. They're expected to be back, I think, for their 5th game. Darren Reed coming back for his 5th.
Lost track.
It's 4 or 5. I mean, they've been to almost every – I think the San Jose State game, they weren't there. Other than that, they've been to every game. I feel like that is going to be dependent on head coach, which we could probably say for everything. But, man, you've got Tony Mitchell, Darren Reed, Quay Russaw, James Smith. Those are your local guys, and I'm sure the Langston Hughes guys are all coming over from Atlanta. I'm sure there's going to be we're going to have a big list Thursday or Friday for this coming weekend. But I'm expecting it to be loaded, and I'm expecting the difference between this weekend with Cadillac and this weekend with Brian Harsin, I think, is night and day as far as atmosphere goes. Don't get me wrong. I think Auburn fans would come out against Texas A&M with Brian Harsin, and it would be a 5 to 6 on the Jordan-Hare scale. I think with Cadillac and him playing at home and the things that he said in the media and the chemistry he's built with this Auburn. It's not chemistry, man. It's just everybody's coming together. It's just like we said.
Galvanized figure.
There you go.
Good guy, man. Not only is he an Auburn hero, legend, whatever the right word you're looking for. He's a good guy.
He's a great guy.
People like him. Hey,
and you can see that.
Yeah, one more. And speaking of him, his main guy,
Oh, yes.
Jeremiah Cobb,
Huge.
the running back. Is he going to be at Auburn this weekend?
Supposed to be.
Yeah, you need him there because he just visited Georgia. Now Georgia's trying to flip a running back. There's again always different things go in play. Georgia's trying to flip a Georgia legacy from Bama. If they feel like they can do that, they're going to lock in on him. If not, then they lock in on Cobb. So there's a lot of things in play here. But yeah, Auburn's, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. A lot of kids going to be there this week.
I think it's going to be an amazing atmosphere inside Jordan-Hare Stadium. Kickoff, I believe, is at 6:30 against A&M. Auburn is a 2-point favorite with Cadillac Williams on the sidelines. Several former players coming back to support former teammate and Carnell. So I'm expecting several players back. A big difference in the crowd. The atmosphere is going to be absolutely electric. Looking forward to that. The recruits will be there. Before we go, Keith, I want to give everybody one more reminder on Caleb, man. You guys are looking for that Ford and Lincoln, that special this weekend. Invoice this week only. Give Caleb Schofield a call, 334-531-0996. Invoice all week long. Give Caleb a call. Keith, we appreciate it, big dog. We're going to get out of here. We'll be back tomorrow with the Modcast. We'll also be back Friday taking a deeper look into the recruiting weekend that will be. For Keith, for Zach in the back, I'm Jeffrey Lee. Y'all stay out of the left lane, please. See ya.